All right, and we are live. So, welcome everybody to our broadcast once again. Once again, with me, I have Rod McDonald from the Certified Coaches Federation, Healthy, Wealthy, Wise. Welcome, Rod.
Hey, Richie, how's it going tonight?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Very well.
Yeah.
Already a very busy start to the year.
Yeah. What's going on with you starting this year? What are you up to?
So many different things that we have going on with the Certified Coaches Federation and Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise. In particular with CCF, as you may or may not know, we renovated our Level 4 certification last year, and we are renovating our Level 3 certification this year. And so just a lot of improving everything that we're doing and giving people lots of opportunities to participate. Our Professional Speakers Federation training, headed up by Chris Capatura, is now Level 1, 2, and 3 have been relaunched. And so a ton of phenomenal material. And of course, the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise coaching program continues to grow. We have the basic level, the Platinum and Platinum Pro coaching business, and just amazing opportunities for people who want to either become coaches or want to be clients. And that's kind of what we're talking about tonight, right?
Yeah. We want to. It's something that I've been passionate about it for years. Whether it's having a life coach, having a mentor, having people around me. We talked about on the last broadcast about having the positive people around you. But life coaching has helped me tremendously over the last few years. Whether it's me coaching other people and that inspiring me to do more things in my life, or being coached by people like yourself. So it's really important. And actually, spoke with Chris this afternoon from the Professional Speakers Federation. So him and I had a good conversation about the revamping of the program, Level 1, 2, and 3. So I did the Level 1 back in, I believe, 2016. So I'm actually going to be signing up and restarting to do my Level 1 again, 1, 2, and 3. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think you're going to really like it. Knowing what was in the previous program and knowing what's in the Level 1, 2, and 3 now, you're going to be blown away with the difference. There's just so much material. And the way some people describe it is kind of like drinking from a fire hose. So it's a lot of material in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've been so I just recently finished the level 2, I believe it was, right? Yeah. The Level 2 course. So I want to talk a little bit about, I want people to know, because people ask me all the time. The main question I get about, life coaching is, what is a life coach? Because a lot of people kind of equate life coaching to counseling. And that's not really what it is. It is, but it isn't, right? So, I mean, you kind of, you get to know your clients on a personal level, if that's what they want. Some of them, that is what they want. But I think a lot of people mistake in counseling with coaching. So give our listeners a little bit of a background on what the difference between talking to a counselor and talking to a coach, working with a coach, is.
Sure. So, there's a lot of different professions that help and support people, body, mind, and spirit, right? If you look at it from a very broad perspective that way, you have people like physiotherapists and chiropractors and many more that work with people's bodies. You have, people like psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, and coaches that tend to focus more on working with people and their minds and mindsets. And then on the spiritual side, of course, we have people who might, be a religious practitioner or a leader, a priest, or a rabbi or something that will help people on that side of things, depending on what their belief system is. And so, when we look at coaching, as you said, the thing that people tend to be a little unclear about is that differentiation between a coach and a counselor or other, mental health professional like that. And the best way that I tend to describe it is to say that those other helping professions like counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists tend to help someone from their distant past up to now. oftentimes dealing with mental illness or childhood trauma or other types of things that are more of clinical nature. And they do a really good job at doing that, generally speaking. What coaches do is we look at the now going forward, right? So that difference, they look at the past up to now, we look at the now going forward. And it's an important distinction because as coaches, unless we have that additional training, we're not trained. It's not in our scope to unearth childhood trauma and try to help somebody working through that stuff and whatnot. What we're here to do is to help the client set goals and pick specific action steps and support them on their moving forward in their lives. And in some cases, some of the best combinations of support for a client would be to work with somebody like a counselor, psychologist on some of that old stuff, and also work at the same time with a coach on where they're at and where they want to go, because those things can be worked on concurrently.
Yeah. I think that's really important, especially in the times that we're living in now with, what we're going through with the pandemic and all that stuff like that. It's important that people are looking forward. There's lots of anxiety, there's lots of anger and lots of fear as to what's going on and, what has happened in the past. But, like you said, as coaches, we're always talking to people about the future, what the future holds, being positive about the future. And a lot of people don't know how to, sit down and look at what the future looks like and how to get there. Okay, I know I want to do X, but how do I get there? And I think, and you've, speaking from experience, and that's what I like to do is just talk about my experiences, right? With you, when you and I talk, I've had goals along the way that, some of them have been little goals where, I've had speaking engagements where you and I have worked for weeks on, okay, this is my speaking engagement. Here's how I'm going to write my keynote. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to practice and all that stuff. And then we work on things moving forward in the future, like for myself, my coaching business.
Yep.
And having somebody there that helps you set that pace, if you will, moving forward really, really helps. Otherwise, you're kind of like lost. You're kind of like wandering around, not knowing what to do. You're not sure of the resources that you need. You can go online and Google something, but geez, if you could get just lost in all that, that's so distracting, Googling all that kind of stuff like that. So having somebody like yourself, a certified coach that helps you set those things in place and then achieving them at a specific timeline, right, to help you move forward, whether it's a new job, a new career, whether it's moving away from a relationship, a long-term relationship, or anything like that, right? That helps you set yourself up for the future. So I think that's a really important thing, and I think that's what I want our listeners to understand about coaching is how much it helps you for the future. We've got a lot of things and we've got a lot of baggage in the background that's happened in the past, but again, the past is the past. And yes, people have a lot of things to overcome from the past, but you can't sit and dwell in the past because you're never going to move forward. So yes, it's important to work on the stuff from the past, but what are you doing moving forward, for the future?
Yeah. And, there's this sort of danger zone or pothole or whatever you want to call it that people encounter on their way to their goals, which is this sense that they should be able to accomplish everything all on their own.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous because that's not how we're wired. As human beings, as a species, we're not wired to do things on our own. In fact, if you go back through evolution, we were actually designed and were able to become the, dominant species on the planet, for better or worse, but the dominant species on the planet because we came together and learned how to work together with each other over millions of years to develop into who we are today. And again, for better or worse, because there's obviously some not so good examples of that happening. But the best of it is where one or more people can support one or more other people to be better in doing what they're doing, working on what they're doing, to become better at that and achieve their goals. And so, the simple example that pretty much everybody understands is the sport coach, right? Which is, and we've talked in the past about Michael Jordan and other athletes and having benefited from the coaches that they've had. And, it's pretty easy for someone to to conceptualize that if there's an athlete who has a lot of promise and they get the right support and accountability and, a little bit of butt kicking once in a while, a little bit of, cheering for every once in a while, but basically that support along the way, the athlete will accelerate their development and really turn into who they can become.
Yeah.
The athlete does the work, but the coach is the one that's going to be encouraging them, supporting them, pushing them, and so on. And that's essentially what we do as life coaches, business coaches, and really any other kind of coach, like relationship coach or marketing coach or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that, how you said about, with athletes, where a coach, takes them to another level and whatever it's what kicking their butt or doing whatever, because if you look back at the documentary of Michael Jordan, and he talks about how, working with all the different coaches, and it wasn't until I think he worked with Doug Collins that allowed him to come into his own game, not try to make Michael Jordan into something else. Yeah. And, it was that type of coaching that allowed him to, and sometimes it's not even just a coach telling you what to do. It's a coach realizing your strengths and allowing you to build upon that and coaching you that way, right? Because we don't always want to go in and change people's mindsets and change people's perceptions. And I think, again, going back to counselor versus coach, we're not trying to change somebody's mindset. We're trying to make you into a positive person. We want to make, into a successful person, but we want to build on your strengths, and we want to work towards, moving towards that, not change you into a different person. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So many people don't achieve what they want to achieve in their lives because of fear, and because of limiting beliefs. And you could say that fear is a limiting belief to a certain extent, but it's fear resides at a deeper emotional level. And so you have the deep emotional level of fear, and then you have this sort of intellectual manifestation of, I don't believe I can do this. I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think I have enough education. I don't think I have enough whatever to accomplish whatever that is. And one of the things that a coach can do is to ask empowering questions to help the person remember or think of for the first time that maybe they do have what it takes to accomplish what they want to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. And for all of our listeners on tonight, or if you're listening to the broadcast after the live, send in some questions. I want to hear people's comments, people's questions. I know a lot of people have questions about life coaching, about, whether you want to hire a life coach to help you in your life, whether you're interested in becoming a life coach, anything like that. Just send in the questions here. We've got our comment post up here, and I'd love to answer some of your questions and have some of you get in on the conversation here. So with talk about a little bit about the Certified Coaches Federation. So right now is a perfect time. We talked on the last broadcast about people now, being out of work, not having a job, or, looking for something new. If I want to start, what if I come to you and I'm like, hey, listen, I want to be a life coach. I like to help people, but I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. And I call you, and what's the starting point for me with CCF?
Well, it's a great question, and I don't want to turn this into a big commercial for CCF.
No,
that's not why we're here, right?
Yeah.
But I think from a general standpoint, I think that coaching as a career, whether it's part-time or full-time, whether it's sort of checking it out initially and then deciding whether it's for you and how you can work it into either what you're already doing or how you can turn it into an entrepreneurial business. What we do at CCF actually is really well suited to that, because the very first component that we offer people is a very easy to digest, if you want to put it that way, 2-day training. Usually takes place over a Saturday and a Sunday. And that's our level 1 certified coach practitioner training. And that gives people the opportunity to, for a relatively affordable amount of money, to be able to spend 2 days get the foundational training, the language, the questions, the forms, the process, everything that they need to get started as a coach if they want to. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that I emphasize, and I'm actually teaching a course this coming weekend, January 9th and 10th, that it's not the end of your education. So, sometimes people look at it like, well, what am I going to learn in 2 days? And how am I going to be qualified after 2 days to be a coach? Well, the truth is that you're not qualified to work with every single person on the planet. Of course not. It's not the end of your education. It's the beginning of your education. And one of the things that we value most is practical application. And so not only do you get practice in the course, but you actually have to go out and find a client. It could be a friend or family member or coworker or somebody that you can work with and practice what we've taught you to be able to successfully get certified. Mm-hmm. And when you continue on with that, then you get to practice more. And eventually, if you feel like you're able to, then you can start it as a business. But it's a very easy way to get in, rather than for somebody who's like thinking about some other profession and they might have to leave their job and go back to school full time for like 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever the case may be. That's a big undertaking, and in some cases a big risk if you're not sure you like what that profession is. Mm-hmm. And so we give you that opportunity to come in and kind of, in a sense, dip your toe in the water. And what's really cool about the course is that over these 2 days, you not only get the training, but it's an actual coaching experience for you, because you get to be a client in the course to your partner, and then you also get to be the coach for that partner as well. Mm-hmm. And over the course of the 2 days, you get to practice what we're teaching you. And it's a pretty powerful experience. We get people who come in a little bit nonchalant. Sometimes they're like, well, what's the big deal? It's 2 days. I'll get this over. I'll get my certificate. And then somewhere along the way, usually by the end of day one, beginning of day two, there's some pretty profound experiences, because we teach you the techniques to actually not let someone get out of that tough conversation of what is it you really want? How's your life going to be different when you achieve it? And what are the steps you're going to need to take to get there? And so it's pretty transformational as it is, and that's just a level 1 course. Yeah. And so that's essentially what they would get if they came through and did our program.
And you do learn a lot about yourself. I found when I took that first course, I found out a lot about myself. And I think there's a lot of people out there that would make good coaches that just don't realize it. Don't realize that that's what they're doing on a regular basis. Like if you took, if you're working and, if you have a corporate job and, or not even a corporate job, if you're a manager and you have people that report into you, you're essentially a coach already anyways. If you're a manager at work and you've got 5 or 6 people reporting into you, you're their leader. You're essentially their coach already. So, when you say life coach and you talk about being that person that just, talks to people and coaches people into, a different type of lifestyle, a different type of mindset. It's more too of, you're a coach at work, you're a coach at home to your kids, you're a coach, I'm a coach to my clients. So for me, being a coach to athletes and a life coach, it helps me tremendously, because getting into that mindset of, being an athlete and then also helping them towards achieving their goals in the future, that's a huge bonus for me. Right. And, that, and I'm leading into a question that we have up on the board here. I'll post it up here. So I'll go first and answer Tina's question about, what motivates and drives you. So just like what we've been talking about, what motivates and drives me is being able to help people. When I'm able to help somebody and I get to see somebody succeed because of something that I've helped them through, that motivates me more. Whether it started out with fitness, when I started out helping people through fitness, and much like everybody else's mindset, when I started out as a fitness coach, it was like, okay, I want to help people lose weight. Okay, well, you don't know how transformative that is to that person and to yourself. When you take somebody, and I had a gentleman that I had helped lose 150 pounds about 6 years ago, and I've had a lot since then. But when I see somebody's life transform because they lost, whether it's 10 pounds, 15, 20, or 100 pounds, people's lives transform. People don't understand that going in. They think, I'm going to do this weight loss program and I'm going to lose 30 pounds. Well, losing that 30 pounds is transformational mentally, physically, emotionally, even spiritually. So when I get to be a part of that and I get to help people change their lives, or I get to lead my team at work, and I get to see somebody get promoted, or, that's what motivates and drives me. So seeing other people succeed motivates and drives me.
That's I think that that's probably common for a lot of people who are drawn to coaching, right? Is that we want to help people, and we get a lot of benefit for ourselves from the helping, right? When we watch someone improve, when we watch someone break through some kind of a barrier, real or imagined, that's very rewarding for us. And I think, you were talking a little bit about, if you're already in a job and you're already kind of in a leadership position, you're probably already a coach to some degree. And I think that that's true. I would add that, if you're the kind of person that people approach for advice, which is not what we do as coaches, we don't give advice. We ask empowering questions to help the client figure it out for themselves. But if people already come to you for support, asking your opinion or your perspective on things, then that's an indicator that that there's something about you that is making it safe for them to approach you. But coming back to Tina's question and answering it myself, I guess, to be really honest, it changes. What motivates me, what drives me, changes over time and has changed over time, depending on what stage of life I've been at. And from a very broad perspective, I guess if I sort of do a quick sort of jump back in time and then jumping forward back to now, I would say, when I was a teenager, for myself, there was a lot of teenage male energy that I needed to sort of put into something. And so for some time it was track and field, sometime it was martial arts, other things. For me, it was also later in my teens, it was lifting weights and doing things like that. So it was always about, what I could get my body to do. And I think that's quite common for a lot of teens, in particular teenage boys. And then into my 20s, as work became more of a factor for me, it was less about that and more about what was interesting to me. So I was continuing to exercise, but I was really interested when I started my first few jobs. I was really interested in getting better at my job. And so my shift went from what can I do to be my best to what can I do to serve best. Or I probably wasn't thinking about serving in my 20s. I was probably thinking about to be successful in my job. And inherently that meant helping the people around me be successful. And so, like you, Richie, I consumed tons of books. And back then it was like cassette tape. So I'd listen to it on my Walkman or whatever.
You're dating yourself.
Yeah, I know. And listening to all that stuff, the Stephen Covey and Anthony Robbins and Norman Vincent Peale and all that stuff, and wanting to kind of understand myself so that I could better serve the people around me, and also learning sort of stuff like, how to run a business and how to lead people and so on. And then over time, I actually, when I got a bit of momentum going with that, my shift came back to what was it that I needed to do? And so I reignited some of that fire in myself. And part of that came from having my first child, my son. And at the time, not going into the whole story, but I had a couple of near drowning incidences, and I didn't want to pass that on to my son. And that was the early inspiration for me training for my first Ironman triathlon. Was just simply, it wasn't about the race. It was about doing something so difficult that I had to be comfortable around open water so that I wouldn't be a negative influence on my son. And so at different times in our lives, I find that, and there's actually some good research around this, is that we sort of shift at certain times of our lives from being focused on ourselves to being focused on others, and then back to ourselves, and then back to others. Mm-hmm. And it's a long-winded answer to Tina's question, but at any point in our lives, I think that we have to ask that question. So it's a great question, Tina, to ask, which is, what motivates you? What's going to, when you're working on something, whether it's your job or business or, your body or whatever the case may be, what's going to get you up early? What's going to keep you up late? What's going to get you doing it when you're tired, when there's distractions? What's it going to be? Because it doesn't have to be, bodybuilding. It doesn't have to be business. It could be whatever. It could be, improving your education or whatever the case may be. But and for many of us who have had children, it actually becomes about our children, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to create a legacy. At a certain point, we want to create a legacy, and usually it's in our 40s ish that we hit that. We realize that maybe we're sort of tipping towards death more than birth, and we start to think about, what are we going to have taught our children? Yeah. But at any stage, it's what's really important to you, and how can you use that to fan the flames of that fire so that you can keep going even when it's tough.
Yeah, I like how you said about different things in your life. What motivates you has changed over the course of time, because as you were talking and as you were saying that, my mind's starting to spin, and I'm like, yes, that's absolutely true, because depending on what you're doing, depending on what part of your life you're in, or if you're in a new job or if you have a new child, because your motivating factors could be so different up until that point you have a child, if that's what it is. And all of a sudden your child's born, and now what motivates you is different, right? Or if you decide, like for you or and myself, if I decide to do a bodybuilding competition, when you decide to do an Ironman, there's different motivating factors. And I think it's important to realize that, and that you have to draw on that motivation for every different part and every different aspect of your life, right? So I know for myself, right now I'm in off season, so I'm not training for anything, but I know that leading into going into prep for a competition, I have to draw on different things to motivate me. And I mean, for me, for what we do in bodybuilding or in Ironman, you kind of have to be a little bit, you have to have a screw loose pretty much for what we do, because when I tell people that the suffering part of it motivates me, that's crazy to an ordinary person who's never done it. But yeah, when I think at different points in my life, when I'm in prep, what motivates me is that suffering. And why is it that motivates me is the suffering? It's because I know that in my mind, nobody else is doing this. No, like there's only a very, very select few people that are doing this, that are going through this suffering and being able to continue through it. And that's what motivates me, because I know in my mind, I'm part of such a small elite group of people. And same thing with Ironman. And I think with Ironman, it's even a smaller group of people that can actually train and finish that. So that's a motivating factor for me. And then, when I'm going through my day, whether work is stressful or, training is hard, or I'm just stressed out about stuff, when I look at my two girls, that they're my motivating factor for continuing on and not handling stress in a different way, as opposed to punching a hole in the wall. You kind of, they're watching, calm yourself down. They're watching. So, make them understand how the right way to handle stress is. So there's so many different motivating factors. So I really like that you said that, because it really kind of puts things into perspective.
Yeah. And, for the people that might be watching that are familiar with Arnold Schwarzenegger and one of the first movies he was in, which was a documentary called Pumping Iron, there's a great scene in that movie where one of the documentarians, I think it was what was his name? Butler. I think it was
George Butler.
George Butler. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was George Butler was asking Arnold, and it was in the middle of a gym, and the weights were clanking and behind them, and people working out, and Arnold was in between sets, and George Butler asked him. He said, Arnold, to a lot of people, like, this is crazy. Like, why would you lift all these weights and do this day in and day out and whatever? And Arnold had the best answer, and it's unscripted, obviously, because it's a documentary. And he said something to the effect of, George, to everyone here, this might seem crazy, right? To everybody here. liftings of weights, and I'm a sculptor. I can do a little bit, put a little bit of the muscles on the outside of my shoulder, but like some guy driving a car like in a race car 200 miles an hour, that's crazy to me, right? Like driving around in a circle, going around. So
that was awesome.
So the takeaway, thank you, the takeaway is like what's crazy to one person isn't crazy to another person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And doing a bodybuilding competition is crazy for some people. Doing Ironman is crazy to some people. But for other people, it's like, hey, yeah, I'm going to go do my PhD. Some of us would be like, well, that's crazy. Why would you spend that much money, that much time just for like a piece of paper, right? But that's not the point, right? Like, and one of the things as coaches that we have to do is we're not there to judge someone's dreams. We're not there to pop the balloon of someone's hopes and what they want to accomplish in their life. What we really are there to do is to help them identify what those dreams are and help them commit to them so fully that the steps to get there become almost easy, right? Mm-hmm. And it's, it was something that's worth fighting for. It's never really going to be easy, but it's kind of like, and this because you have daughters and I have 3 kids, and if our children were at risk, for something, there was an animal or whatever it might be, there would be no question that we would jump in and do whatever it took to protect our children.
Yep.
Right. And so if you want to look at it that way, you'd say, well, that's easy, right? But you might have to like face a grizzly bear or an alligator or something at some point, but you wouldn't even think about it. Your commitment to it is easy because it means so much, mm-hmm. right? And so as coaches, if we can help the client identify what they want and help them identify why that's important to them, and sort of pump that up and fan the flame of that passion, and remind them of that when times get tough and when they get tired and when they get burnt out and overwhelmed by life and all that stuff, remind them about why they're doing it, then it almost becomes easy to face the grizzly bear, easy to face the alligator, easy to face whatever it is, because it's so clear why we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think a lot of people are like, they know what they want inside, they know what they want to do, but I think sometimes people are either ashamed or just don't know, they've never really said it. Like, how many people, if you talk to them and you really, really get deep and ask them, what is it that you've always wanted to do? A lot of people, I think, get afraid or shy or embarrassed or whatever it is about saying what it is. And it could be anything. I mean, you could be VP in your company, but deep down inside, you want to be a professional bowler, or you want to be an equestrian, or you want to play the violin or something like that. And I think it's important that you get that out of people, because a lot of people keep their passions to themselves and they never find that happiness. Like you said, to like, when you find what that is, there really is nothing going to stop you from doing that. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to respond to that, I think that sometimes it is fear. I think that sometimes people are afraid of sharing what that goal is because they're afraid of being judged. They're afraid that, somebody's going to think it's silly or inappropriate or be doubted that they could do it. In some cases, I think people just forget. I think that people have dreams early on in life, and sometimes it's childhood, sometimes it's teenage years or early adulthood. I think the dreams can happen anytime, but I think a lot of them happen early in our life when we're just full of possibility, and we haven't been sort of beaten down by life as often happens. But I think people sometimes also forget. They forget about what they want, what they'd like to have, their dreams. And in some cases, they allow that to happen, mm-hmm. right? They accept the job that burns them out. They accept a relationship that isn't rewarding. They accept, different other responsibilities, which sometimes they have to take on and sometimes they don't. They choose to, or they allow them to be given to them. And so, and there's this at certain times in our lives, and it usually happens in roughly the 30s into the 40s, where we're sort of we have this yoke of responsibility, and it's often our young family, our mortgage, our job, and we tend to sort of put so much into that in our 30s, which is why usually in the 40s you hit what's typically called a midlife crisis, where usually the kids are starting to get older, they're less dependent on the parents. Maybe you've hit a certain steadiness in your jobs. You don't have to work so hard for it. And so in the 40s, there's this sense of, oh my gosh, like, why am I really here? Which is why most coaching clients and most coaches are in their 40s and 50s, is because it's that time of life that we wake up on both sides of it, which is, hey, I really want to help. I want to make the world a better place. So those people become coaches. And then other people wake up and like, hey, is this all there is in life? I actually want more. And I'm starting to feel like I'm starting to age, and I have to hurry up and get what I want. And there's an awakening at that point often for people and their dreams. And if that person that realizes they have a dream can work with the right coach who wants to support them in that dream, then it's pretty magical what can happen.
Yeah, I think it just reminds me of the post that I actually just did today. I put up a video today about taking care of yourself, because you're right. When you hit that certain point in your life, and typically, it is in your 30s, late 20s, 30s, where you start to put so much into, whether it's your family, a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, a job, whatever it is, and we slowly, and it typically happens slowly, we slowly stop taking care of ourselves, and we forget about ourselves until it gets to a point where you wake up one morning and look in the mirror and you don't even recognize that person anymore, because you're trying to put so much into everything else. The people, your friends, your coworkers, your job, your family. It's always constantly about helping other people, and we never stop and help ourselves. In the video that I put up today, for the followers who haven't seen the video that I put up today, I use an analogy of, when you go on an airplane, the first thing during the thing that they do on the airplane, they say, in the event of an emergency, an oxygen mask will drop from the panel above your head. Secure your own mask before securing anyone else, before helping anyone else secure their mask. And there's a reason why they say that. It's because if you don't put that mask on and you don't get the oxygen, you're going to run out of oxygen. You're going to pass out. You're going to die. And if you're passed out on the floor and you're going to die, you're not helping anybody around you. And that's the same analogy in life. If you're not giving yourself that oxygen, and that oxygen is what makes you happy, what makes you feel good about yourself, what makes you get up out of bed every single day. If you slowly, every single day, that oxygen is slowly leaking out, and because you're trying to give it to your kids and your family and your job and everything else, there's going to come a point in time where you just are out of oxygen, and that typically leads to, anxiety or a breakdown or something like that. So it's extremely important to take a look at that and go, okay, what am I going to do for myself? And I think the fear of that is people don't want to be selfish. And I heard that a lot when I was taking on a lot more clients for lifestyle change, when I was doing athletes and people who wanted to lose weight. And we talked about the commitment, because that's the first part of it. If you can't commit to the program, you're not going to succeed at it. And the first thing they said was, well, this is going to take time away from my family. This is going to take time away from my work. It's going to take time away from this. And that's the first thing their mind goes to is, well, if I do this for myself, I'm taking time away from this. Well, guess what? If you don't do this for yourself, you're not going to have that time to give to everybody else, right? And that's what everybody feels kind of shameful about, is that, oh, I'm selfish if I take an hour a day to go to the gym or go for a run or take a course. I'm being selfish because I'm neglecting everything else in my life.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And there is a sense, and this is part of the sort of going back and forth in life, from thinking about yourself to thinking about others, and thinking about yourself and thinking about others. there's nothing wrong with thinking about yourself. There's nothing wrong with, understanding what you need as an individual and satisfying those needs, as long as it's in the context of the rest of your life, right? And so, and actually with Ironman triathlon, it has what I've heard anyway, is it has the highest rate of divorce out of any, sort of recreational or professional sport. And that's because of the amount of time that it takes to dedicate to it. Mm-hmm. And that sort of makes sense, because if someone is so centered on accomplishing the goal that they let go of the responsibilities and commitments related to everything else, their work, their family, then those things are going to suffer, right? And so there's the sense that there's a higher level of selfishness, which is actually a positive selfishness. The negative selfishness is only thinking about oneself and forgetting about everything and everybody else. And I know you well enough to know that you never did that, because you always gave time to your wife and to the girls in the midst of all of your training. There was, a balancing that had to be had, right, with all of that. But some people don't do that balancing, right?
Yeah.
And so they pay the price for it. So the higher level of it is to be able to say, okay, well, I identify what I want and why I want it and why it's so important to me. And I'm also going to identify what's important to the most important people in my life. So to say what's really important for my spouse, what's really important for my kids, what's really important for my parents or my siblings or my best friends or whoever it is, what's really important for my work, and say, well, can I achieve what I need for myself to be my best and to feel like I'm living fully at the same time, not at the same moment, but over a course of time, satisfying all those other responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And that's tough. That's really tough, which is where a coach can also be helpful. One of the questions that I ask my clients when I'm working with them, if they're married or in a committed relationship, I'll always ask, have you talked to your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever it is? Have you talked to them about this goal? Because you obviously, whoever I'm talking to, you've obviously been thinking about it for a while, sometimes years, and now you're getting ready to actually do it. But have you shared that with this other person? Mm-hmm. And usually they don't, right? Because they've been thinking, and sometimes they're afraid. They don't want to share it because they might be judged. And then I'll ask the next question, which is a really tough one, which is, do you know what your spouse's big dream is? And they're often like, oh, I never even thought about asking.
Yeah.
So imagine at that higher level, right? If you can not only go after your most important goal, but you can also help your spouse, and depending on the ages of them, they're your kids. How can you help your spouse get to their goal at the same time? Because, when you talked about, making time, go for an hour to the gym, it's in that context of the conversation of, hey, honey, I want to go to the gym, 4 times a week, an hour each time. I'm thinking about going these times. What do you want to work on that I'll cover the kids? I'll take care of the kids while you're doing that. Mm-hmm. Right. And finding that balance. So it's not just about you, but it's about you in the context of everything else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget too, I mean, there is that the sacrificing piece of it, so that you're not being that selfish person and making the sacrifice. For me, I'll use myself as an example. So when I'm in training, or every other day, actually, because this is my normal wake up time. But when I made it a goal, I made it a commitment to myself that if I'm going to do this and I need to spend 2 or 3 hours at the gym or whatever it is, it wasn't going to be, it can't be in the middle of the day because I work, and I don't want it to be at night because I want to be home with Jen and the kids. So I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Yep. I'm up at 4. I leave at 4:30. I'm training from 5 till 7:30, and then I'm off to work. Yep. So there's nothing, nobody needs me from 4 in the morning till 7 in the morning. Nobody. So I'm not taking my time away from my kids, my wife, my family. And then at the same time, because I'm doing what I love to do, and putting myself in that happy place, and I feel good and I look good, and everything, and I have the positive mental attitude, well, guess what? That resonates with Jen and the kids. It resonates with the people I lead at work, and that makes me a better person overall. So yeah, there's the give and take, and then there's the personal sacrifices that you have to make, right? I'm usually in bed by 8 or 8:30. So we're coming up on bedtime soon. And I'm not drinking, I'm not going to parties, I'm not doing really anything during my prep. Now, you might say, well, that sucks. That's no way to live your life. Well, okay, but it's not. But what life are we modeling this around? This is what makes me happy, right? This is what I like to do. Just like you said earlier, some people might say, oh, I want to get my PhD. And you might look at them and go, well, that's crazy. For me, I look at somebody who, likes to sit and do numbers and spreadsheets all day long. And I'm like, oh my God, that drives me insane. I'd never do that. But people might look at me and go, how can you eat 6 meals a day and train 3 hours a day like that and be tired and angry and cranky and hungry all day long? That's insane. Well, that's my definition of insanity and happiness, right? Because it makes me happy. So
yeah,
there's a give and take in all of it.
Yeah. And it's about finding out what that, to use those terms, what's your crazy happiness, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the thing that you're willing to sacrifice and commit to get that makes you truly happy? And there is a deeper level. We're not going to have time to get into this tonight. Maybe it's what we'll talk about next week or week after that or whatever. But there is a need to look at why you want the thing that you want, right? Mm-hmm. And usually there's an emotion behind it. You're going after some kind of an emotion, and it's usually at a subconscious level that if you get that thing, then, whatever that accomplishment is, bodybuilding, Ironman, business, money, whatever it is, that once you get that, then you'll get the emotion you really want, whether that's happiness, love from something else, from somebody else, from some, whatever. It could be joy or bliss or freedom from fear or freedom from pain or whatever the case may be. Acceptance. Maybe if you've always felt rejected, maybe it's an issue of getting acceptance. Somebody going after a master's degree or PhD, maybe it's a feeling like you've never felt you've had authority or you've never had the recognition that you wanted, and so that might give it to you. And it's not to say that those are good or bad things, but you got to be careful, because if you're going after a goal and it's not really for the goal, it's for something else, and you might be able to get that thing or you'll never get that thing. That's important to know so that you can really figure out what it is you need to get to accomplish that goal and get that emotion that you really, really need, rather than what you might think you need.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long have you been a coach now, Ron?
I guess it depends if you're talking sort of formally using that title or informally. But informally, I would say probably 20 years at least that I have been working with people. And now I'm being generous here because I would include the time that I worked, and I would even go further back than that, maybe even 30 years, if I include when I was a personal trainer and a trainer of trainers, when I first started doing public speaking, when I first started working with people and coaching them on what they were doing. That goes back that far, but in a more formal sense, probably about almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we do in CCF, which is somewhat unique, is that we don't take away someone's life experience and only look at their formal experience. Philosophically speaking, we actually look at anybody who wants to become a coach and we say, what, everything that you've experienced in life and work and education, formally and informally, has made you who you are today. And who you are today is who you're going to be as a coach. And so we're actually very generous in that sense, because we want to welcome all of those life experiences. Some, a lot of them very positive, some of them not so positive. And we want to encourage people to acknowledge all of that stuff, extract the lessons where necessary, and then use all of that stuff to be a coach. So when somebody goes through our 2-day training, they don't just have 2 days of training. they have 2 formal days of training, but they might have 40 years of life training that they're bringing to those 2 days.
Yeah.
And we think that's really, really important philosophically from a coach education standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's so important, that you have, and everybody has life experiences. I mean, everybody has their story. Everybody has what they've gone through and what's brought them to the point where they're at. But you made a comment earlier about, most coaches become coaches in their 40s, in their late 30s, in their 40s and stuff like that. And I think that goes to what you just said about life experiences. Like, I want to help people based on my life experiences and what I've gone through and what I've witnessed and what I've seen and what I've experienced, as opposed to just, I do read a lot and I learn a ton from what I read, and it's extremely important. But I would rather speak to somebody who has gone through what I'm going through or something similar to give me that experience or that advice, because you can talk from a place of emotion. You know what I'm feeling when I'm telling you, this is what's stopping me from doing what I want to do. This is what's stopping me. And if you've gone through something similar, or you've had experiences like that in your life, you can come at me with that sort of emotional experience as well too. And I think that's really, really important for people to understand about a coach that you're talking to, and for people that want to become coaches. And I think it's, the more life experiences you have that you can pass on to people, I think that's really what makes a great coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if can you hear what's in the background?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. Hopefully our listeners can't, although I wouldn't mind if they can, because 2 of the reasons why I do what I do are home now, and they're running around screaming upstairs, and they're occasionally calling for daddy, and and it reminds me, the sometimes people hear kids screaming or like running around and they get annoyed by that, and I've always found, maybe it's the kid in me, but I've always found that the sounds of kids running around and playing, whether it's my kids or other kids or whatever, like if on an airplane or something, or kids, jumping around, it's never really bothered me, because children are only children for a little while, right? And it's in those childhood years that, whether you call it magical or imaginary, but kids play and they imagine all kinds of different things. And in that time is when they imagine their dreams of what they want to be, whether it's being an astronaut or a princess or, a lawyer, doctor, dentist, whatever it is. And I think that's something that as coaches, we can help remind people of. And sort of as we begin to maybe wrap up for this evening, we can, remember and encourage the people watching, whether it's live or on the replay, that, wherever you are in your life, whether it's in your 20s or 60s, sort of towards more of the beginning or towards more of the later years, there's an opportunity to wake up that childlike playfulness and to remember, if you've forgotten, what makes you happy and what gives you joy in life, and to do more of that, because we don't really know how long we have in our lives.
Yeah.
And why not spend it doing things that make us happy?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. We don't get to be here long. And I think too many people are living it, negative, depressed, sad, all day long. And there's so much help out there. There's so many things you can reach out to, whether it's a coach, whether it's a counselor, whatever it is. There's so many tools out there that'll help you, achieve your goals and get your life to that next level. So, I appreciate, you working with me. I appreciate you doing these broadcasts with me. I love putting this information out to all of our followers and everybody out there. So, as I say, always reach out to myself or Rod if you guys have any questions. You know, we're going to continue doing these broadcasts. You know, we're going to get some people on here as well with us, hopefully in the future. So if there's anything that you guys want to hear, specific topics that you guys want to talk about, please, you know, send us a message on Facebook, on email. My email is richie@richbody.ca. Rod, yours is?
Rod@certifiedcoachesfederation.com.
So feel free to reach out to us anytime. Thank you again for your time, all of you on the live broadcast tonight, and everyone watching the replay on Facebook or on YouTube or on LinkedIn. Thank you very much, and we will see you guys again next week. Thanks very much, Rod.
Great. Thank you, Richie.
Good
Take
night,
care, everybody.